The events take place in Detroit in 1957. On the assembly line of the car factory, we see a batch of beige sedans. However, one of it has an atypical red color for this model. When a worker reached under the hood of this car, the lid spontaneously slammed shut, causing him an injury. Later, another worker sat inside the car, shaking ash onto the seat upholstery. The shift at the factory ended. The shift supervisor heard music coming from the red sedan. When he opened the door, he found one of the workers lifeless. Next, the events take us to Rockbridge in 1978. A guy named Dennis Gilder stopped by to pick up his friend Arnie Cunningham. In contrast to Dennis, Arnie is an awkward and shy guy wearing glasses. On the way, Dennis told his friend that since they are entering high school, he needs to get a girlfriend. However, Arnie, being insecure, always hesitated to talk to girls. Dennis, on the other hand, is popular in school. Everyone is talking about the new girl Lee Cabot, who transferred to their class. She looks stunning, and all the guys fell for her at first sight. Of course, someone like Arnie doesn't stand a chance. Arnie often becomes the target of mockery. Today, school bullies took away his lunch. Dennis always stands up for his friend. The main bully, Buddy Repperton, stepped on Arnie's glasses. Of course, Dennis couldn't let it go. A fight broke out. As Dennis and Arnie were outnumbered, they couldn't handle them. The school teacher, Mr. Casey, intervened. Buddy continued to behave aggressive, denying everything Arnie and Dennis said. However, Mr. Casey quickly put a stop to this outrage and told all the bullies to go to his office immediately. Before leaving, Buddy threatened Arnie. Of course, the guy was very frightened. After classes, Dennis gave Arnie a ride home. They know Buddy was expelled, but he will surely try to get revenge. At some point, Arnie noticed something and asked his friend to stop. It turned out that Arnie's attention was drawn to an old red sedan that looked very dented. Arnie fell in love with the car at first sight and got the idea to restore it. George LeBay, the owner of the car, approached the guys. Arnie eagerly asked him how much he wanted for the car. George handed him the keys, saying that the name of the car is Christine. According to George, it belonged to his brother, who passed away 6 weeks ago. George is willing to sell the car for $250. Dennis tried to dissuade his friend from this idea, because for that money he could buy a decent car. But Arnie, who had been saving all summer, had already made up his mind. He fell in love with Christine at first sight. George LeBay seems strange to Dennis. The guy is sure that this man is hiding something. Of course, Arnie's parents were not thrilled that their son bought a car that looks more like scrap metal. Arnie yelled to his parents that he has done everything in his life not to upset them. Now he only needs one thing. His mother made it clear that there would be no cars in the house. In a fit of emotions, Arnie left, slamming the door. He drove the car to the junkyard, where he could find all the necessary parts for repair. Dennis went with him, although he did not support this idea. The guys made a deal with the junkyard owner, Will Darnell. Later, Dennis asked his friend what was so special about this car. Arnie said that maybe he just found something uglier than himself for the first time in his life. However, Dennis doesn't consider his friend ugly. He's more of an oddball. Arnie returned home late. His parents almost went crazy with worry, but Arnie refused to explain to them. It was October 9th. Arnie was engrossed in fixing the car. The junkyard workers were amazed at his skill, but in their opinion the guy could have chosen something better than scrap metal. Darnell offered Arnie a small deal. He would watch over the junkyard, and in return could take as many parts as he wanted. Arnie did not expect such a generous offer. With each passing day, Arnie becomes more attached to Christine. Meanwhile, his classmates are contemplating how to approach Lee Cabot. All the guys want to ask her out, but she rejects each one of them. Summoning courage, Dennis still invited her to the disco on Friday. However, Lee said she couldn't because she already had a date. The classmates laughed at his failure. Returning home in the evening, Dennis overheard Arnie arguing with his parents. They live next door, so Dennis is aware of what's happening in their house. Arnie's parents didn't want to let him go out late at night, but he no longer needs their permission. Dennis noticed that his friend had changed. Arnie stopped wearing glasses and became much more confident. Moreover, Arnie started neglecting his best friend. Arnie's mother asked Dennis to influence her son, but Dennis barely sees him. The woman said that ever since Arnie bought this car, it's like he's been obsessed. Furthermore, she is concerned that the previous owner of the car perished inside it from carbon monoxide poisoning. Dennis decided to visit George LeBay and talk about his brother, as well as Christine. George simply said that this car was the only thing his brother truly loved. Anyone who tried to come between him and Christine later regretted it. Even when his daughter had an accident in the car, it didn't make the previous owner part with it. At night, Dennis sneaked into the junkyard and tried to get into Arnie's car. Suddenly the radio turned on by itself, causing Dennis to run away. After that, the radio turned off. Dennis plays for the school football team. Today there were competitions, and Buddy and his buddies were among the spectators. Seeing Arnie's car, they conceived something nasty. Seeing Lee coming out of Arnie's car, Dennis got distracted from the game. Meanwhile, Arnie kissed Lee, causing Dennis to miss the ball. This game was very violent. Christine now looks brand new. On November 5th, Arnie visited his friend in the hospital. Dennis got serious injuries and feels constant pain. But what upsets Dennis the most is that he can never play football again. Arnie has indeed changed a lot. Now he is dating the most beautiful girl in school. Dennis wonders how Arnie managed to restore the car so much. Arnie evasively replied that it's thanks to patience. His parents allowed him to register the car because otherwise, he threatened to drop out of school. In the evening in rainy weather, Arnie and Lee visited the open-air movie theater. Arnie wanted more, but Lee said she couldn't do it here and left. Arnie followed her, asking what was wrong. Lee said she hates this car because Arnie spends much more time with it. After calming down his beloved, Arnie convinced her to get back into the car, or they would catch a cold. However, Lee continues to be jealous of Arnie's relationship with Christine, perceiving the car as a rival. When Arnie got out of the car for a while, the radio turned on by itself. Lee, who was eating a sandwich, suddenly felt like she couldn't breathe. Both Arnie and Lee tried to open the door, but the car locked itself. Eventually a passing man managed to open the door and help Lee. The girl gave Arnie an ultimatum, either her or Christine. Lee is convinced that the car is consciousness and is jealous of Arnie. When Arnie, after the quarrel with the girlfriend, returned to the car, it wouldn't start. Only when Arnie began calling Christine affectionate words did the engine start. Arnie drove the car to the junkyard, unaware that the bullies were watching him. When Arnie left, they started smashing his car. Buddy did it with double enthusiasm. Suddenly the radio turned on by itself, but one of the guys broke it. Arnie and Lee reconciled. Since Arnie forgot his wallet in the car, they went into the junkyard building before school. Seeing his smashed car, Arnie was desperate. Christine was the only thing he loved, and now Arnie had lost her. Lee tried to comfort her lover, but he chased her away rather rudely. During dinner, Arnie's mother expressed regret. Arnie in turn began to accuse her of selfishness since she didn't allow him to keep the car near the house. The father told his son that they had decided to buy him a new car. In response, Arnie insulted his parents, stating that he would fix his car. All he needed was Christine. The father demanded an apology, but Arnie clearly had no intention of apologizing. From now on, all Arnie wants is to get Christine back. He wants to make things even better and show everyone what they can do together. Suddenly the car's parts began moving as if it were a living being. However, Arnie was not surprised at all, as he had long understood that Christine was not just a car. In front of Arnie, the car repaired itself and became brand new. That night Moochie, one of Buddy's friends, noticed Christine, looking as if it had just come off the assembly line. He approached, convinced that it was Arnie's doing. Suddenly the headlights lit up, and the car drove straight at him. He tried to run, but Christine was faster. In the end Moochie ended up in a dead end. He had no chance of escape. It was November 23rd. Arnie visited Dennis again in the hospital. Dennis was aware of what happened to Moochie. Arnie said with a smile that he almost felt sorry for him. Dennis asked about Christine. Arnie said he spent a lot of money on his car, but now it's in perfect condition. Also, Arnie hinted that if Buddy comes back and tries to harm Christine again, he will regret it. When Arnie skipped school again, Detective Rudolph Junkins approached him and inquired about his car. Locals say the car was smashed to pieces, but now it looks brand new. Arnie assured that he just worked a lot on it. However, the detective finds it suspicious that Moochie perished shortly after he and the other bullies smashed Arnie's car. The guy just laughed. The detective has no evidence, so he can't accuse Arnie of anything. In the evening, Arnie called Lee and suggested making up. When Lee hesitated, Arnie yelled at her and hung up. It made Lee cry. On December 16th, Buddy and his friend Rich were having fun as usual. At some point, they noticed a car following them but not overtaking. It turned out to be Christine, intending to settle the score with those who spoiled her hood. At first, Christine just played with them. Getting furious, Buddy and Rich got out of the car, intending to teach the pursuer a lesson. However, they got seriously scared when Christine rammed Buddy's car at full speed. The hooligans realized that it was Arnie Cunningham's Cadillac. It seemed impossible. Christine rammed them again. Fuel spilled, and the gas station caught fire. Rich was inside. Buddy, who was outside, ran away, but Christine pursued him. In doing so, the car was engulfed in flames. Soon Buddy ran out of strength, and he suffered the same fate as his friends. Will Darnell was shocked when he saw the charred car of Arnie driving into the garage. Darnell took a rifle, suspecting that something ominous was involved. And Darnell was not mistaken. He was even more shocked when he realized that there was no driver in the car. It seemed to have a will of its own. Christine didn't need unnecessary witnesses, so she decided to get rid of Darnell too. When he was inside the car, everything around started to shrink. In the morning when Arnie arrived at the junkyard, he saw the police. Rudolph Junkins demanded answers from the guy about his whereabouts the previous day. Arnie has a solid alibi, confirmed by a receipt from the store and witnesses. The detective told Arnie that his boss was found lifeless in the front seat of his car. In addition, witnesses saw Arnie's car chasing Buddy and Rich last night. None of them survived. Arnie swore he didn't know what was going on. Of course the police were going to confiscate the car. Lee called Dennis and said she wanted to talk about Christine. In the face-to-face meeting, Lee claimed that Arnie's car was alive. Christine had taken control over him, and that's why Dennis and Lee intended to destroy it. Returning home, Lee noticed Christine. Hearing a honk from outside, Dennis, who was now moving with crutches, went out to him and sat in the car. Arnie looked obsessed. He no longer resembled that quiet, timid guy who was afraid of everyone. At some point, Arnie took his hands off the steering wheel. He wasn't worried, knowing that Christine was driving on her own. Dennis told his friend that the car had subjugated him to its will. But Arnie doesn't want to hear about it. He's grateful to Christine for getting rid of all his enemies. Arnie doesn't even hide it from Dennis. When Arnie started talking about love, Dennis thought he meant Lee, but of course Arnie was referring to Christine. No one would dare come between them. The next day, Dennis scratched Daryl's "Tonight" on Christine's hood. That same evening, Dennis and Lee sneaked into the junkyard, which was closed by police order. The youngsters planned to destroy Arnie's car with an old bulldozer. Having developed a plan, they waited for Christine, intending to lure her into a trap. But it turned out that Christine outsmarted them and arrived here earlier to get rid of her main rival. Lee rushed out while Christine continued to pursue her. It turned out that all this time, Arnie was inside. Christine completely subjugated him to her will. The car was again advancing towards Lee, but the jolt caused a small accident. Arnie became an unintentional victim of Christine, whom he loved so much. Christine seemed to be genuinely grieving over this loss. Taking advantage of this, Dennis smashed the car with the bulldozer. He and Lee won, although they couldn't save their friend. Suddenly Christine repaired herself again. Dennis had to run the bulldozer over the car to completely destroy it. In the next scene, we see the crushed car on the junkyard, compressed by a hydraulic press. The detective praised the young people for their bold move. Suddenly the music that Christine usually played during each hunt started playing. But it turned out that the music was coming from the junkyard worker's tape recorder. Lee said she hated this song. No one noticed how the compressed car began to slowly unfold. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.